So I think that people absolutely love. I think it's great that it's just regular folk. And, it can be a young person, old person, man, woman, and I think that for the most part, taxi drivers are mostly men, and they're usually immigrant men, and that's not like an issue. But I feel like conversation-wise, that it helps because. I feel that the type of conversations that I'm able to have with some of my passengers, if they want to engage in conversations, is very different than I think than a conversation that you would engage in or not engage in with a taxi driver that may not speak English well, that may not be very interested in talking to people in their cab, because it's about it's about the money. They have to pay their bills, they have to pay their hack licenses, and there's really just no time to talk on that. So that's my thoughts on why I think that ride-sharing companies are winning the transportation wars against the taxis. The thing that I think that taxi companies, instead of complaining and trying to make ride-sharing companies illegal, maybe you should use their model and try to change what you're doing. Try to change your business practices, your pricing, or something to better attract more passengers, so that you're not blaming it on another company. As I've told several taxi drivers that have trolled onto my videos and on my channel, I told them pretty much, if you have a problem with Lyft or Uber, you can go ahead and sign up for it and become a driver. It's not, it's called, if you really want to talk about labor, someone tried to talk to me about labor history, and I was like, I don't know about labor history, but I do understand supply and demand. I do understand that, what competition leads to change. I understand what a monopoly is, and if taxis are the only form of transportation, and they have not been treating their passengers that well and have been receiving complaints because of bad service, and then another company comes out and does extremely well. I mean, I feel like Uber is a $1 billion business, and Lyft is trying to get up there with them, and I don't know how Sidecar is doing, but if they come up out of nowhere, like in the last 5 years they show up and they can make $1 billion, you should wonder why people are deciding to use those services. And it's the same thing that I told somebody when they try to ask me about that. And I was like, well, look at Greyhound and Peter Pan. They're sister companies underneath the umbrella of Greyhound, and they were the only ticket in town for bus fares pretty much to all major cities. Now, I lived in New York and I'm from Boston, and I used the bus quite often to come home while I was in college, but I eventually started using alternatives because it was so expensive. When people started telling me about the Chinatown bus, I was like, oh wow, that is so much cheaper for me to get home. And even though it's inconvenient to have to go all the way down to Chinatown and wait on the street for a ticket, it is still cheaper than a Greyhound, and I will do it. And I think because they lost so much business from Chinatown buses, they decided Greyhound had to lower their prices. You can get between New York and Boston for as low as $10 on a non-high traffic time. Like if you wanted to go in the middle of the day and you bought your ticket like 2 weeks or 3 weeks in advance, you can go for $10. Trust me, as high as maybe $15 beforehand. Because they had experienced competition and they had to lower their prices and change. They had to improve their buses. They had to improve their policies so that they can compete with businesses like Chinatown, instead of trying to attack them and try to get them, banned, which I'm sure they probably did. But at the same time, they found a way to improve their services so that they could attract people like me who were turned off by the exorbitant prices they were charging for a very short distance. That Chinatown bus showed passengers that you can go between these major cities and not pay $50, $60 one way to get there. So they had to do that, and I think that's exactly what's happening with taxis, that they're experiencing this, they're experiencing this push from this new kind of transportation system, and instead of trying to change, they're just attack, which only makes them look worse. I mean, really think about it. taxi driver. This is for all them taxi companies, yellow cab, green cab, whatever cab, that you still have business. I live in the suburbs now, and this is pretty much, I mean, like, it's very rare to get an Uber or a Lyft out here. So we still have to depend on taxis. So you still have business and people who live in smaller towns and the suburbs and stuff like that. But you should try to change your tactics so that you can attract younger and you know, different passengers and not complain about how you're losing business. I mean, you guys are not Amtrak. I'm sorry. Amtrak is the only one that still has a freaking monopoly on on their type of transportation, because of the fact that, I mean, where else how is a new train going to show up on Amtrak's lines? I mean, think about that. But buses, you can buy a bus. I could buy a bus tomorrow, you know, get a business license and smack, you know, Toya T's bus on it and start my own bus company. And the same thing for what Uber and Lyft have done for you know, car service. That, I mean, it's not hard. So I don't know. I'm not trying to. I mean, shoot. If you want, I mean, that's all I gotta say to you. That's all I gotta say. I don't want to say more. I ain't tagging taxi drivers. I do think that there's still some great taxi drivers out there, but don't come, you know, yelling at me on my video and talking about this and, you know, going to legislation when, you know, like all things, when you have to adjust to change. I mean, you do not, come on taxis, you do not want to go the way of Blockbuster. Blockbuster was offered, the people who made Netflix, they offered them the opportunity to get into that business. They offered it to them and they said, that sounds stupid. And now what are they? Netflix is a $1 billion business and Blockbuster is out of business. It's bankrupt and out of business because they didn't see that direct service, mailing DVDs to people was going to be a big thing, and then they wanted to hold on to it and think that they could still survive on their stores, and now there's no Blockbuster. So taxes, that's your choice. Either you decide to change and come up with something new, have Wi-Fi in your cars or something, or you're just gonna go the way of Blockbuster. Just saying. So, guys, let me know what you think. I didn't want to make this too long, and I probably will have to edit some of this, but let me know what you think. Comment, like, and subscribe. I would love to hear from Lyft and Uber drivers, and the taxi drivers want to get in on the conversation. Go ahead, let's talk. I love to hear from people who are actually using ride-sharing companies. If you were an advocate of driving, taking Lyfts or Ubers now, or people who still take taxis and still don't understand it, let's talk. Share this around. I would really love to really start a dialogue. And my Lyft car conversations will continue. All right, guys, have a great day. I'm out of traffic and I'm almost home. So, all right, bye-bye.